Hey, so it is somehow already May, which is kind of mind-boggling to me because I don't know, I came home, I think it was the end of March, and now it's already May, and it just feels like weeks keep going by, but I've just been doing the same thing over and over and over again, so I don't really notice how much time has been passing until I wake up and realize, oh, it's May already. So I guess in the art world, May means it is time for Mermay, which is all mermaid themed goodness. So I decided to kind of participate in that. I won't be doing art every day for the mermaid theme, just because I take a long time to finish an art piece. Usually it takes me, I would say between 5 to 12 hours or so per piece, just because I'm a little bit slower at art, and so I don't think I have the time or really the motivation to do a piece every single day, but I'll definitely be trying to do at least a piece every week, or maybe 2 pieces every week for Mermay. But because jellyfish are my favorite animals, I decided to do things a little bit different from the more traditional mermaids and have them all jellyfish themed. So all of my pieces for Mermay are going to be based around different jellyfish species. So this one that I'm currently doing is based off of the Pacific Sea Nettle, which is, in my opinion, a really beautiful jellyfish. They have just such a vibrant orange color, and I've always loved the lacy tentacles, which are actually their feeding arms, what they use to eat with, which is kind of weird, but I don't know, I just have always loved how frilly and lacy they look. They're just so elegant, and so my first one I decided to base off of that. It's a pretty common jellyfish, if you see one, it's pretty, I would say, kind of stereotypical jellyfish, which is also a super pretty one, so that's the one I'm going to go with first with today's video. And I actually had a lot of fun with the colors in this one. I'm not used to doing such vibrant colors, like a piece really focused on a specific color. Normally I think I've been doing that a bit more recently, but when I was first starting art, pretty much all of my pieces were black and white, just graphite pencil, because I was mostly just doing portraiture at the time. And over time I got into painting a bit, and now I really enjoy working with color, but I'm still learning a lot about how to use color well, because I definitely feel like sometimes not all my colors are very cohesive, so I was really trying to use the colors well in this piece. So everything was I was trying to go for a lot of warm colors rather than more cool ones, which was a little bit difficult because since jellyfish are underwater, they're going to be surrounded by more cool tones. And so I do think I maybe was struggling a little bit with trying to keep everything super warm when it was underwater. Yeah, so anyways, it was definitely a fun one to work with, but with all those cool tones in the water, it was definitely a little bit more tricky, and I think I could have done a better job including some more cool tones in the shading and such, because obviously if you're underwater you'll be picking up some of the tones of the water around you, and the way the light filters through water is kind of different than how it filters through the air. But I don't really personally have a lot of experience with that sort of thing, so I kind of just had to do what I could, and maybe it's something I'll be practicing more, especially with everything being mermaid and water themed this month, or most of my pieces. I don't think I'll do all of my pieces themed around mermaid, but I'll definitely be doing a lot more with sea creatures, which for me is really exciting because the ocean is definitely one of the things I'm most fascinated with, and not just jellyfish, but all sorts of like sea creatures have always just, I love them. And so I'm definitely excited to be able to explore more with that, but it will also be definitely challenging trying to figure out how to do things like lighting underwater and getting that kind of underwater feeling, which is something I definitely don't have a lot of experience with. And also, like, for example, her hair is how am I making it looking like it's moving in water? That's another thing I've definitely struggled with a bit because I'm more used to painting things that are not in the water, or if I'm painting something in the water, I'm usually using a direct reference to make that. Which actually, speaking of references, I am finally using that app I mentioned in my last video that uses like 3D modeling to pose for art stuff. Not sure if I explained that well, but I finally was able to use that and I was able to pose the model how I wanted for this piece. I might put the link to that app in the description, so if you enjoy art and are looking for ways to get references without having to sift through a bunch of poses that aren't quite what you want, or do what I do and awkwardly pose in the mirror and take pictures of yourself and get some weird looks if somebody accidentally walks in on you doing that. But so I've definitely enjoyed using that, and I'm definitely going to be using it more for my art because it's very useful. So if you want to check that out, that is a really useful resource in my opinion. And I don't know how I didn't realize something like that existed sooner. I've always been, using the actual like physical models, either through references or those like little wooden posable ones, or using myself, and having something that is digital but also something you can customize just to how you want it is so nice, very useful. So I'm definitely going to be using that for my future pieces, especially if I'm doing more complicated poses or things from weird angles that I'm not used to. And it's really nice, I found, because you can actually adjust the light source. So if you want more atmospheric lighting or direct lighting, you can adjust the amounts of those, and you can move the light source around and rotate it how you want. I haven't checked to see, there might be a way to even add multiple light sources, but I haven't experimented very much with that. It is a free app though, so that's nice. I think there are maybe extra features you can buy, but I found that the free version works quite well. And with this piece, I actually had a lot of fun with the lighting because, as I mentioned before, I'm not really used to underwater lighting, but I was having a lot of fun with using the color orange to like make the highlights in this piece. It felt really strange to be just taking straight up orange color and just putting it on her skin, because normally I'm shading or highlighting in an actual skin tone, and obviously her skin isn't like bright orange, but using that highlight I think helps reflect some of the lighting that's coming off of like her hair and her jellyfish, I don't even know, tail. I don't know exactly what, it's not really a tail like a traditional mermaid, it's the whole bell of the jellyfish, but that was, I think, something that was really kind of fun to kind of play around with, even if it didn't turn out perfectly. I definitely enjoyed being able to experiment a little bit more with lighting and colors, and using colors that I normally wouldn't use for like highlighting skin. So that was definitely fun, and I am actually pretty happy with how that turned out. I was a little bit worried that it would be too strange to have just like straight up orange highlights, but once it all got blended in. I think it actually fit in pretty well with her skin. And so, yeah, at this point I was just kind of refining everything and getting her face I was struggling a bit with. And even in the final product, it's still not quite how I would like to, especially her mouth. As you can see here, I had been kind of struggling with it. For one thing, I wanted it to be very visible, and it kind of just blended in with her face too much and just wasn't very noticeable. So near the end, I think I tried to add a little bit more coloring to her lips in order to make them pop a bit more, and adding some more like strong highlights. And also her eyes are a little bit almost too stark, I think, against the rest of her face. I think they could have used a bit more shading to help them be a bit more cohesive, which I think I added a bit more near the end of this piece. But at this point they're definitely like, oh, those are eyes, and they stand out more than anything else on her face at this point. And I think it's partially because everything else is like these warm colors, and then all of a sudden you have bright white for her eyes. And I think adding more white throughout the piece would help with making sure things aren't that strong of a contrast to the point where it's almost distracting rather than like what you actually want in the final product. So I definitely think making sure colors are properly distributed is really important, which is something I'm realizing watching this back after doing it, is I should have tried to make sure that like maybe her eyes should have been a slightly deeper orange color, and maybe there should have been more white throughout the piece. However, I do add a little bit of extra near the end. And just being able to kind of refine jellyfish, I think, are a little bit tricky, in my opinion, to get to look really good, because they are so like elegant, but they're also kind of transparent. And I mean, getting something to look transparent isn't particularly difficult, but getting like the overall, like I was really struggling with whether to include the white underpart that I had, like the block of color I had originally put in, or if I should take that out. And I think I eventually decided to just turn the opacity down on it a little bit, so that it's still there and you can still see it, but it's not as bright, so you still get a little bit of that transparent feeling to the jellyfish. And I had a lot of fun with those frilly tentacles, just because, I mean, they're probably one of my very favorite things about this particular species of jellyfish, along with the bright orange color. And I've always really liked making things that are look kind of that ribbony look. And there's this, if you have ever seen like a nudibranch, which is a type of kind of like a sea slug thing, there's one particular one that looks like a ribbon floating through the water, and I just absolutely love the way that it looks. So yeah, for whatever reason, those frilly feeder tentacles really kind of remind me of that particular nudibranch, and I love how like graceful they like ribbony looking things go, especially when they're in the water kind of floating around, which is, I think, what really draws me to this particular species of jellyfish. It's just how graceful they look, which I tried to sort of emulate in the pose, but I don't think it turned out quite as well as it could have. I think she could have definitely had a little bit more flow to the actual pose itself, but I tried, and it was fun. The bubbles were also something else I really was struggling with. Drawing transparent things has always been kind of a personal struggle I've had, and especially because I wasn't sure if I wanted them to be orange or not. I was definitely struggling with trying to decide the color for them. And looking back, maybe it would have been better to just go with kind of plain blue bubbles, because I think that would have maybe distributed the colors a little bit better throughout the piece and also make the bubbles look more like bubbles. But I had fun making orange bubbles, so I don't know. They were kind of different and maybe they didn't turn out quite how I wanted them to, but they were also really fun to make. And doing like the little heart-shaped ones was also another thing that I'm not sure how I felt about how it turned out in the end, but it was also really kind of fun to experiment with that. So I don't know, it might not be perfect, but it was definitely fun, and that's really the only reason I make art, is because I enjoy it, and it's not, about getting this perfect end result, but more about, for me at least, the process of creating a piece and taking a completely blank canvas and just making it my own and doing what I want with it. Even if it doesn't really turn out good in the end, that's okay, because that's not why I make art. I don't make art for the purpose of it looking amazing in the end, which I think is why, like, when I was younger, I really wanted to be a professional artist. I wanted to have that be my job, and I still don't know really, like, I think that would always be something I would love to be able to do, but at the same time, I think because I want to make my art the way I want to make it, and I don't want to just feel like, oh, I have to make my art in order to please a certain audience or make art in such a way that whoever I'm working for is happy with it, but making art for the sake of me being happy with it is kind of the reason why I make art just as a hobby and not trying to be professional. Obviously, I don't even think my art would necessarily, it would take a lot more, I think, for my art to reach that professional quality level, but even so, I think I'm kind of satisfied not being a professional artist, even though when I was younger, that was definitely kind of my dream. And in some ways I felt like, oh, I gave up my dream for something more realistic, which currently I'm studying linguistics, and I don't know. Now, though, I don't really view it as like, oh, I gave up my dream for something realistic for the sake of money or anything like that, but I really more view it as kind of a personal choice that I'm actually kind of happy I made, because I can still make art no matter what I do in the future. But if I'm doing it just for myself, then I think that alleviates the stress of trying to make art that looks good enough, or art that is like popular, or is art that is like something that appeals to certain people. But instead I can just make what I want to make, and in this case I want to make a jellyfish mermaid, and if nobody else likes it, that's okay, because I like it, and I actually had so much fun making this particular piece. It was actually probably one of my favorite pieces that I've made in recent years, at least of the last, like, since I started digital art. Actually had a lot of fun with this one. I don't think the execution is the best it could be, but I had so much fun making it, and like adding like the lacy tentacles to her hair, which almost gives me like the feeling like it's almost like a wedding veil or something, and I just think it adds, which is how I kind of wanted to distribute that white color throughout the piece a bit more, and I think that's how I ended up doing it. So I don't know, I was actually pretty happy with this particular piece. And now I am out of school for a few weeks. I finished my last final on Friday, so that was good. I'm glad I'm done with that. Although I am doing summer school, so I guess I'll be going back to school in like another week or so. But that's okay, because I'm only taking one class and it won't be stressful like doing 5 classes is. So I'm kind of glad to be done with that and just able to focus more on art and enjoy my summer, even if I am still stuck at home under the stay home order. So I hope everybody else is staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys next time.